Assuming you have CRA obligations, what are your next steps? Well, your first option is to leverage OWASP SAMM. You can do a SAMM assessment using either an Excel spreadsheet or our SAMMY tool, which is completely free of charge, available for everyone out there. And then as you go through the SAMMY tool, you can fill out the assessment for OWASP SAMM. Once you have done your complete assessment, you can switch to the reporting mode and then pick a target posture, which is called CRA readiness baseline. This will immediately show you where your gaps are. And then once you know where your gaps are, you can start improving these activities and making sure that you work towards your CRA compliance. Option B is to use our CRA framework. Couple of words about the CRA framework. SAMM will get you really close to CRA compliance. However, first of all, even in SAMM, there are topics that are not really necessary for CRA compliance. For instance, SAMM asks you to continuously improve your risk assessment methodology. CRA doesn't really care about this. CRA only says you have to have a risk assessment in place without specifying the methodology itself. Secondly, we also have CRA compliance related requirements that are not really in SAMM. For instance, CRA asks you to keep records of technical user and product documentation, whereas SAMM doesn't really care that much about documentation per se. Finally, and most importantly, SAMM focuses on your overall AppSec SDLC. CRA is focused on the product. So together with my colleague Lara Brito, who is a legal expert, we've done a deep dive into the CRA and created the CRA framework that is sort of a minimum viable framework to prepare you for compliance. So instead of using the OWASP SAMM framework, you can also use the CRA framework and then do an assessment using the CRA framework. The assessment looks more or less like for SAMM, but there are much less number of questions. And the question quality criteria are tuned specifically towards CRA. So for instance, many of the quality criteria in this case are going to talk about the product and not really your application process and so on. Once you have completed the CRA specific assessment, you can again go to the reporting and then see your gaps that the tool has helped you identify. And you can start working on closing these gaps. You can even create an improvement roadmap where you say, you know what, we're going to focus on our risk assessment methodology because we have a partial implementation there and we're going to get that to completion and then work on things like incident response. And then only at the end, we're going to work on user documentation, technical documentation, and product documentation. Finally, there is another secret/hidden option where imagine you have already created a SAMM assessment, you are using SAMM as a framework, and you still want to use the specific CRA framework that we have created. You can always use our mapping feature where you can select, I want to map the SAMM assessment to the CRA assessment. And then something that we have added recently is the possibility to generate a CRA assessment based on the information that you have done using the SAMM assessment framework. And this is a nearly instant action. We are not using any AI, by the way, but we can derive the answer to a large extent based on what you have filled out in SAMM. In the detailed view, so there is a quick view and a detailed view. So far, I've been only demonstrating the quick view because it's much easier and more comfortable to work with. In the detailed view, you will have a little bit more information as to how we have generated this score. What was your original score in SAMM? Some mapping information, coverage, and then how did we come up with this score? We have also copied over the documentation from the SAMM assessment. So we have kept things like the set of evidences or the observations for documentation purposes. And now you can go ahead and then much more quickly finalize this CRA assessment based on your SAMM assessment and then get to the same gap analysis report that I was talking about. Probably it is a good idea, and again you have to select the target posture here, the CRA readiness baseline. Probably it is a good idea not to just blindly click on I accept all the answers as the ground truth, but then go through them and then make sure that the CRA nuances are correctly shown and visible in the selected answers.